our key advisors and key faculty members are Dr. Faiz Shivji and Dr. John Ndikum. I'll do a quick introduction about them two first before I go into introducing Robin. Dr. Faiz is an ex-orthopedic surgeon by background. He's worked within the medical affairs industry as a senior medical advisor at MSD. That was before pursuing an MBA from London Business School. He then started working in strategy consulting at McKinsey, and now is the Global Commercial Strategy Director for Immuno-Oncology Bispecifics at AstraZeneca. We also have Dr. John Ndikum, who was also previously a doctor in the NHS. John has worked within clinical research and medical affairs in multiple therapy areas. He is currently the medical manager for rare diseases at 𝗤𝗲𝗄𝗏, working at an affiliate level and reporting directly to Global. John has also ventured across the pond and completed his Masters of Public Health from Yale. He teaches at UCL and Cambridge, and recently completed his tenure as the chair of EDI committee of the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine. And if that wasn't enough, John has also published 2 books, one of which is an anthology of poems, which is quite interesting. And finally, we have Robin. Robin is an Oxford-trained biologist and a medical director and a medical doctor by background, and is now the head of clinical research at 𝗬𝗲𝗰𝗄 𝗪. Speaking to him earlier, I know that Robin is a little jet lagged from his trips in Canada, so thank you for joining us today. This was very short notice, so thank you for that, Robin. But interestingly enough, Robin is also a Byte Labs Pharma alumni from our previous cohort. So it's really good to see him here, really good to see him progressing in his career, and really interesting to see how you're going to lead the conversation. I'm going to pass it over to Robin now. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to go into the background, and I'm going to let Robin, Faiz, and John take the conversation.
Right, hi guys. So yeah, slightly unfortunate for me going last in those introductions, but I am someone who much more recently transitioned from clinical work and did a half pivot into health tech. And the Byte Pharma thing was quite useful for me to get more of an idea of pharmaceuticals generally. So hopefully I can be a kind of bridge point in this conversation. But to go in, Faiz, could you start by doing a kind of overview of the major transitions that happened in your career from moving from clinical to the corporate setting? And then could you pass the same question on to John, just so everyone's kind of on the same page going forward?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. So I went from, I was post-ECT orthopedic. So I finished up my post-ECT fellowships and then moved into medical affairs at MSD UK as a lung cancer medical advisor. So that's kind of like, you know, like the hardest part is definitely going from that clinical part into getting your first job in industry in the broadest sense. So that was my kind of major point. I did that around, I started applying for things around about 4 years ago, and essentially went for medical affairs because I thought it had a lot of benefits to it, really. It would get you kind of key experience in life sciences, which as an orthopedic surgeon, obviously you don't really deal with pharma at all, to be honest. It kind of gets you exposure into life sciences, gets you exposure into, you know, how corporates work, what life is like in industry. And so that was kind of the major reasons for me going into it. And to be fair, like that job has like given me so much that has enabled me to get to where I am today. So I'm very grateful that they took a chance, an orthopedic surgeon, to be a lung cancer advisor. John, what was your kind of like big jump?
Well, I had 2 big jumps. Thanks, Faiz, for that. I had 2 big jumps. The jump out of NHS going to the US, and then out of the US coming back to the UK and trying to figure things out over here. It wasn't so much push factors. For me, it was pull factors. I was realizing that we're in a health system that is not adequately equipped to take advantage of the resources that are available. As a simple example, you've got 4 cubicles and 10 doctors. So that obviously made me start thinking about the factors that are responsible for optimal healthcare, which led to an appeal towards public health. I went to the States, obviously get an international perspective at Yale, but also with a view to explore what else I could do. I did explore management consulting. I interviewed with BCG and McKinsey. I also explored a few other areas, and it made sense to kind of come over here, back here, because the changes that were happening over there as well. And for numerous reasons I won't go into, wanted to get into medical affairs because, as you said, it's quite a multidisciplinary field. It kind of combines the same thinking as consulting does, but then there's an implementation component as well. And it's also got that diagnostic component that we utilize in medicine. So I wanted to find something that was in a nexus. But the reason those were the two pivot points was because making the decision to leave, first of all, go to America, to a foreign country with strange leaders, was emotionally difficult. I had to kind of detach from my identity as a doctor, and then leaving the NHS altogether and get into pharma was difficult. But fortunately, I got to go into the hospitals again during the pandemic, and I'm fully, I suppose, more fully disidentified from that kind of thinking as a doctor, because there is a shift that's required. You know, what got us here won't necessarily get us there, and that's an ongoing learning.
Great. So that's really useful. John, could you tell us more about what medical affairs is? Because certainly for me, it's something that we don't knowingly come into contact with when we're working clinically, although we do. But it's kind of a route that does exist for clinicians, which is quite hard to find out about and to actually understand.
Yes, good question, actually. And I'm not sure anyone has a definite answer to that question, because it's still evolving as a discipline. I remember I mentioned it to a friend of mine who's a country medical director, and he said, John, if you can give me a precise answer for that, I'll give you £1 million. So it gives everyone an idea. What medical affairs is not, it's not easy. It's not a walk in the park. It's not, you know, it's not the secret to ultimate status and power and making your parents proud of you. As I think I get people in my inbox thinking, I want to get into, I think someone said, I want to get into medical affairs and be a PI, or something like that. So the whole point is that it's not just some, you know, something that you plucked out of your mind like a plastic surgeon because it's a sexy sounding thing. So medical affairs ultimately is really about looking at the health system. If you want to look, an interview answer is the bridge between clinical research and the wider medical community. But in practice, what it is really, it's trying to understand the health system as a whole, trying to understand the problems of the health system, and utilizing the tools of medical affairs, which can include various activities. So reviewing materials or conducting advisory boards or going to congresses. So utilizing the various tools of medical affairs to really have a positive impact on the health system with a view to improving the care of patients, which is why I said it has that consulting component. You're breaking down the health system into various components, you're analyzing it, you're looking at the stage of the life cycle, and then bringing tools to the fore. And there's ongoing learning, ongoing experience. You have to incorporate developing technologies. For example, now the big thing is omni-channel. AI is coming into the fore. How can we do that in a compliant way? The Medical Affairs Professional Society recently published a book, so it is becoming increasingly professionalized, which means anyone who enters it has to be willing to learn very quickly. And that's all the more complicated by the fact that different companies deploy medical affairs in different ways. Different companies go at a different pace. They have different culture, keeping in mind that you're working in a commercial environment. So while you're in a non-promotional role, you have to add value in a way that ultimately benefits the bottom line without mentioning it. So that's as far as I'll go without compromising my own reputation. Faiz?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. So like medical affairs is just an absolutely crucial part of a pharmaceutical organization.
Yeah.
Like, kind of, I suppose when I look at it, I don't work in medical affairs now, but I work very closely with medical affairs, the medical affairs team, and our global role. I kind of think of it as like a bi-directional conduit of information, right? So what the medical affairs team is, they are going to be sharing information about our pipeline and about our on-market products to clinicians around the world to help them understand the data better, understand the drugs better, understand how to use the drugs better, to basically give them a fully informed view of our drugs. They're not there to advertise drugs or to sell the drugs. They're trying to give the information so the clinicians can make the right decision for themselves and their patients. And then the kind of in the reverse direction, they're also like critical to receiving the insights from clinicians across the world, whether that's high volume treaters in clinics, or whether it's, you know, KOLs or KEs or you know, big researchers. KOLs. And they want to understand like what are they thinking about the current trends, the future trends, where are the unmet needs in these disease areas, and they're feeding that back to us in the kind of the regional and global level, and that really helps shape our strategy of or where do we want to go in the future in terms of our pipeline and our current drugs. So that's kind of why I think they're so critical, kind of both for us and for the doctors.
Yeah, and this is maybe where I'm useful, because there were a few acronyms there that are quite pharma specific. But
KOLs, key opinion leaders, which are just top tier healthcare professionals or professors at the top of their field. KEs are the same thing, key external experts, but different people will kind of different companies will utilize it differently. For example, what's the word they're not allowed to use in care of the elderly? The patient is, you know, when they can't function. Well, there's certain language that you can't use, so it just depends on the company.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, atopic. You can't use the word atopic. So some companies are as adverse to using the word KOLs as they are to using the doctors are to using the word atopic.
Yeah. I think so. Faiz, given that you've moved from medical affairs into a slightly different role in pharma, could you give a kind of umbrella, sort of a more structured idea of where medical affairs sits in the pipeline of a medication?
Yeah, so I think like if you divide kind of a pharma company into, there's kind of like, there's research and development, so the pipeline of drugs that are not on market yet, they're not advertised yet, they're being researched, where that's in kind of basic science kind of experiments, or in kind of early clinical like phase 1 or 2 trials, or in late stage development, so phase 3 trials. That's how like the R&D side of pharma. And then you have the kind of business side of pharma, which is where they are selling on market drugs around the world. And the medical affairs team, generally speaking, sit on that commercial, as in sit on the on-market drug side of things. Essentially, they don't generally sit within the R&D department. They sit within the kind of on-market drugs department. And every pharma company will have different kind of like names for that, right? But the medical affairs basically dealing with on-market drugs or very late-stage development drugs. And what, like I say, and role there, let's say they're sitting in in the late-stage development drugs. What they want to be doing there is kind of understanding what the future market is going to look like. What is going to be the diagnostics pathway? How are patients going to be getting treated after getting their diagnostics? Where are some of the pinch points? What are some of, like I said, the future trends in terms of new drugs coming out? All those kind of like key market, like healthcare system-wide features that are going to affect the ability of healthcare professionals to prescribe these drugs to patients so they can benefit from them. Medical affairs are going to be looking into that and trying to understand what can we do as a company or as a pharmaceutical industry to make sure we allow patients to get access to these drugs. So that's kind of some things that we're doing in terms of those kind of pipeline assets. In terms of the ones that are on market, it's kind of say what I said earlier on. They're going to be looking at talking to clinicians and saying, look, this is the information about our drugs. This is, non-biased, non-advertising. This is the data. Let me help you understand the data between our drugs and all the other drugs that are available for your patients. And you can make your own decision. I'm not here to sell you anything or to convince you. You're here to make your own decision. But they just want to make sure that clinicians understand the latest data about drugs across the industry for their particular indication. And then, like I say, they're going to be hearing all the reviews from healthcare professionals. I remember when I was a medical advisor, healthcare professionals in the UK were saying they had a particular issue with one of the chemotherapy regimens that was part of our kind of combination that was in our trial, and they were having real issues because they felt like some of their patients weren't necessarily that suitable for it. So it was us trying to then take that back to the global team and say, okay, could we do another trial, or could we generate some real world evidence justifying why they might be able to use a lower dose of that chemo regimen, because then their patients can benefit from the full therapy. So it's those kind of like to and fro that allows basically patients trying to get access to the treatment that they need.
Great, that's really useful. This question for both of you, but let's start with John. So what are the kind of skills and attributes that being a clinician gives you that kind of make you useful in pharma, the kind of things that you might want to bring out in your CV, medical affairs roles probably particularly, but also generally? And what are the kind of challenges that you might find coming from a purely clinical background in trying to sell yourself in a corporate and pharma environment?
Yeah, sure. I suppose the first question is two-pronged, right? Because you've kind of asked what are the attributes that help you to to do well in a Pharma Med Affairs role. And then there's the interview perspective or the CV perspective, which is slightly different. And then obviously the attributes that are inimical to doing well. So it's like two-pronged question in one. So I'll go with the first one. I'd say we have a lot of transferable skills. First of all, we're hardworking. That's a given. Which, I mean, it's a given for all of us as doctors, but you think, oh, isn't that it for everyone? You realize that no, it isn't. So actually, that's an asset. We can keep grinding through no matter what, and that's how we're trained. Secondly, we have this ability to break down a problem. You know, we have to kind of gather a problem, do differential diagnosis, all this kind of stuff. That's actually breaking down a problem. That's actually what consultants, as in management consultants, do. And that's what Faiz was talking about breaking down the problem and then identifying a potential solution through your cross-functional team. So we're good at doing that. You also have good attention to detail, which is good when you're looking at compliance aspects. Oh, sorry, phone call's coming through. Hold on. Sorry, I'm on my phone. So, it's good when you're looking at compliance aspects. It's also good when you're trying to pitch a case. For example, like what Faiz did, right? Is HCP saying, look, we've got a problem here. But then Faiz has to extract the key elements of that problem, see if it applies to other regions, and then pitch it at the level of the, you know, of the global team. So those are the attributes, and then numerous others. And I'd say as well, those who are more senior have the capacity to lead as well, lead teams, and they have a great network as well. They know how to engage peers with HCPs, which is super important, really important actually, because you've got to have some gravitas as well. In terms of CV kind of attributes, I'd say the things to kind of demonstrate, I'd break down into buckets, are first of all, your scientific background, so you're a medical professional in multiple therapy areas, as we call it, or multiple specialties. Number two, leadership. Number three, medical education, and ideally clinical research as well. So there's buckets that you want to break things down into. And then, yeah, those are the ones. So leadership, clinical research, your background, and teaching, medical education, teaching as well. And then in terms of traits that are inimical to kind of progress, I suppose doctors are quite confident. I think we can be confident to a fault. Not everyone, but a lot of us are confident to a fault. We're told coming into medical school we're the cream of the crop, with the top 10%. And then a lot of us aren't used to seeing, I mean, this has been my experience and the experience of a lot of doctors. A lot of us aren't used to seeing bright people that aren't doctors, right? Because we're just in those bubbles. And then you come in and someone's not a doctor, but they're smarter than you and they know how to navigate more emotionally intelligently. And for a lot of doctors, that can come across as a shock as well. And just having the humility to realize that you're in a learning environment, having that kind of apprentice type mindset is really key. The reason it's key is because I've heard as well that a lot of doctors struggle with doctors who've been in a position of authority can bring that to the pharmacist, that kind of higher. I mean, we're called house officers, right? We're officers. I mean, this is a hierarchical military approach. That's the whole point. We have a doctor's mess. My friend at Sandhurst, they have an army mess. I mean, the whole thing is military. And then you bring that military approach to pharma, like you will, I mean, it ends up being a lot of bullying. So that's not good. And then you get chucked out in this modern age. And then also the ability to be patient, which I think I've struggled with, I suppose. I think a lot of people who are very fast paced have struggled because you've coming from acute medicine, for example, it's very, very fast paced. And I don't know how it is as a surgeon. I mean, you probably see immediate results, right? Whereas in med affairs, asking that question that he put to global, it might take months before you get a solution, like something even implemented, right? Get a budget and everything. And you have to be patient with that and navigate people that are working at different speeds and consider their workloads. So people, if you can't be patient or learn patience, if you can't be empathetic, and if you can't go into a beginner's mind, I think you will struggle, not just in med affairs, but anything outside of medicine. A lot of things that are acceptable in medicine are not acceptable in the corporate world, and the consequences of that are much more severe. There's no kind of, we're going to take you to an education supervisor. It's, yeah, you've got 1 week or 1 month, goodbye. I hope that answers all questions.
That was really good. Faiz, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think like just getting purely tactical on this, like in terms of like how you get into pharma, say whether it's medical affairs or not. I think, yeah, like mindset, etc., all super important. You know, once you get in, like I think the way John divides it is good. It's like, what do you need to get in? What do you need to succeed? and they are very, and they are, you know, slightly different things, although they should be tested at interview, obviously. I think in terms of kind of like the how do you get in, you do need to make sure your CV says more than you're just a doctor, because that doesn't get you anywhere, quite frankly. In a super competitive industry, you're going to be having your CV submitted along with, like, you know, 50 other doctors who are also applying, as well as like a bunch of other pharmacists and stuff. So you need to kind of realize that having an MBBS or an MD that just kind of gets you through step one in terms of actually being able to submit a CV. I think you need to be able to demonstrate that you have kind of, you know, skills that are related, or, you know, to pharma or medical affairs in general. Things that I kind of leveraged were things like John kind of was saying. I think having an eye for research and being able to demonstrate you understand how clinical research is conducted and how it is presented, and how, you know, how it's analysed and how it is presented, I think is really important, because medical affairs and medical advisors, they deal in data. So you need to have real confidence and ability to understand how a phase 3 trial is conducted, to understand what the statistical analysis means, and how you are then going to be able to verbally communicate that to a clinician, because they're going to test that at interview. So I think part of the reason why I managed to get my role at MSD is because I published a lot as an orthopedic surgeon, and that meant I was very, very good at just, you know, writing papers, reading papers, understanding stats, presenting them, and actually that kind of gets you a long way through. The next part I think you need to demonstrate is your ability to work cross-functionally or in a multidisciplinary team, and you need to have really core examples of how you have kind of found solutions and worked in a team environment to find solutions within your medical job or training. And I think things like, you know, you need to have really nice scenarios that show how you've worked in a team to kind of like solve these issues, because pharma and actually the corporate world, like everything is team based. It's very, very rare that you'll do something solely on your own, like if ever at all. So you really need to demonstrate that. And I think all like kind of like when you're going for high-end jobs, having some things that set you apart as someone who strives to be excellent, I think is very useful. Whether that's kind of demonstrating awards that you've won, you know, distinctions or merits, or indeed extracurricular things like a passion. I'm not saying everyone needs to become a marathon runner, but just a passion for something else that is not just medicine. I think all these things help you be able to tell a story that, like, you know, you've got a growth mindset, you're learning things, you're interested in life outside of medicine. And then the final thing that brings it all together is to have a really succinct story about why you're interested in medical affairs and why you want to join and leave medicine. Because if you don't have that story, and to be honest, like, you know, before you even start looking to leave medicine, you need to have got this in your, you know, in your own internal dialogue. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And you need to be able to have a really good story, which is truthful, you know, that says, why do I want to leave medicine and join your company in medical affairs? Because, you know, you can't just say, oh, you know what, the NHS is rubbish, I really want to leave, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. Oh, it seems like loads of people are in medical affairs, I'll just go to medical affairs. That's not how it works. People aren't going to be paying you a decent salary in a very sought after job unless you have a very convincing argument. So I think that's probably, like, you know, that's like a succinct way of some of the key factors, I think.
Yeah, I've heard people say, oh, I don't like this anymore, I'm just going to go into medical affairs. Can you think I just walked into this, man? Like, bro, like, this is the whole anyway.
No, I think you both actually touched on something, a warning I would give to people, which is that it's very easy to sniff you out if you're just trying to leave. Like, yeah, and actually,
all factors, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that you said, John, was sort of realizing that there's so many more like other really intelligent or more intelligent people out there. And the thing about medicine is we do get a bit sold on this narrative in medical school that you're doing the best profession in the world and you really are the brightest and the best. And unfortunately, what happens when you apply for all these other really sought after roles is the pool of people you're against just massively increases. So I think, you know, that's one possible like sudden frame shift you have to do if you're leaving our clinical bubble. But it'd be really interesting to hear you both talk about other kind of assumptions you had to leave behind when you moved into a completely different world of work. Or just cultural changes that you might have struggled with.
Faiz?
I think John, you mentioned, you kind of said something. You said like things that come to my mind: speed, security, salary. Three things off the top of my head. Okay, speed being path of progression or speed of work, completion.
Mm-hmm.
Security being job security.
Mm-hmm.
I think let's just deal with speed first. I mean, yeah, John, I think you're absolutely right in terms of like speed of work being done. Like this is not like being, as doctors, I think one of our greatest strengths is actually not that we work hard, but we work incredibly efficiently. That efficiency will only get you so far in pharma because it's a cross-functional team, and therefore you're only as fast as normally. It's not actually the people, it's the processes that allow. So you need to just shelve that speed thing and think, yeah, I can work as quick as I want. I could work 24 hours a day, but at the end of the day, if it's going to take me 2 weeks to get an approval for something, or if it's going to take a year to get this trial read out, I can't do anything about it. So you just got to you kind of just have to have that mindset where things are going to take longer because it's not within your gift to speed things up a lot of the time.
And you can't be lashing out at people because it's slow.
No, I mean, you can't lash out at anyone. This is not medicine, right? Like the culture.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. On the wards, people do that and it's fine.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, the culture of the NHS or medicine is probably, I would say, many years behind that of the culture of the private kind of corporate world. Security, job security, John. I don't know whether you've heard any kind of horror stories about job security, but that sometimes trials don't read out positively. Sometimes drugs fail, and at that point in time, they might have a whole team that is now surplus to requirements. So you kind of need to, that is just a fact of modern life outside of medicine. So you do have to be aware about the fact that your job, we have like a 3-month notice period in the UK that might get used at some point in time. And then salary, I think, is another thing. Like, UK salaries, whether you're in the NHS or whether you're in industry, are generally benchmarked against the local population, and therefore you're no matter what industry you work in the UK, you're never going to be on a US salary, whether that's in medicine or outside medicine. So you just need to be realistic on kind of like what salary you're going to get, I guess. I don't know, John, any other things?
Yeah, just writing what you said, actually. You said speed, you've covered that quite well. Security as well, horror stories, absolutely. We've all heard them. I know people who are VPs that get laid off and they can't find work for a year. The climate isn't, again, obviously you have assets or molecules that don't get the right readouts. And if it's only one and you're in that team, you will get made redundant, unfortunately. Now that's happening right now in the pharma landscape. So what you have is very experienced people in pharma applying for the same roles. Then it becomes highly competitive and you can end up for a few months without a job, which can be quite disconcerting. So what I would say is obviously understand what your response is, your physiological response and psychological responses to that level of risk, which you may not know until you actually move. And for some people, it's disruptive enough that they go back into the NHS. Nothing wrong with that as well. Salary, again, good salary, but you've got to be able to demonstrate that you're delivering value. You're literally marked every day, quietly, but you are marked. And then end of year review, it's like, okay, we've been looking at this, and again, having that is it something that we use from the NHS? I suppose, yeah. So you've almost got to have your A game, but in a new way. You've almost got to like do it in a new way. Like, Faiz's point about the cross-functional team is so important because you might want to go 100 miles an hour, but the cross-functional team is going at 60 miles an hour. And you become the problem if you want to go that far. So you have to kind of find a way to blend in. And if you want to influence, you've got to influence kind of strategically as well. So you can get people to move faster, but it's through strategy and patience. I was going to add a couple more things. Robin, just make sure that I'm answering the question. Can you repeat the actual questions? I have a couple of things to say, but I'm not sure if it relates to the question.
Yeah, well, the question's just around kind of it is a cultural shift moving from a clinical working pattern into the corporate environment. Is anything you've noticed that's
perfect related then? The cultural shift. So culturally, in terms of psychology, I'd say how we handle rejections. Doctors aren't used to being rejected. And actually, I've had friends who've moved in from kind of Faiz's level, either senior SPRs or CCT, who've come in and said that their pharma interviews some of them were tougher on them than their registrar interviews, simply because of the fierce competition, the level of preparation required. It's a new field. And Some people get in 6 months. So again, the fastest I've seen is 3 months recently. This guy's an absolute phenomenal. He's going to go really far. But generally, the fastest I've seen is 6 months. And these are people with PhDs, post-CCT publications, and they're getting in 6 months. They're literally like every single day looking at LinkedIn and applications. I get people going, oh, I've been applying for 3 months. I haven't had a job. You're thinking, man, like this is pharma and we're not used to failing. So kind of, I'm not sure you can train your mind to get used to fail. I think you just have to get rejected so much that your mind becomes not numb to it, but you kind of realize that like failure is as cheesy as it sounds. Failure is part of success. So that's the only way to do that. But then getting used to that rejection is really, really hard, especially to identify with it. So I'm just warning a few people, if it happens, just be patient, reach out to people, and they'll be able to say, look, I had it too, but eventually I got around it. And then progression as well is the other thing I was going to mention. The kind of culture of progression is self-driven. There's no kind of clear pathway. So we've spoken about medical affairs a lot, but I saw someone on LinkedIn, she went into medical safety, so pharmacovigilance, which is safety. Then she went into medical affairs. You know, I might consider commercial at some point, but I've got to think, where's it going to take me in 5 years? You know, we've also got to think, okay, fine. Faiz has a, McKinsey experience. He also has an MBA. If I'm going to want to go up, I'm going to be competing with the likes of Faiz. So what do I need to develop myself now? To what skill? How do I develop leadership? Who are my mentors? Who am I going to observe? And all these I'm already planning this in my head. You know, how am I going to develop myself over the next 5 years? And yes, you get a rough development plan, but that development plan is tailored to the company. So you also have to take your development in your hands. And in the same way that a 4-year-old can't know how to plan to become an adult, you won't know what it's like to plan to become a fully fledged med affairs or pharma professional. That's when mentors come in. And then you have to be very good at networking. We spoke about this before the call, which is the next point, which is networking. That what actually means, right? People think networking is take, right? But 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗵𝘁 wrote a book, Never Read Alone, has the mindset of networking is about relationship building. Even when I'm speaking with recruiters, I treat them very well, because in pharma, recruiters are the gatekeepers, whereas in medicine, the recruiters aren't always treated very well. The network, the pharma industry is so small, especially among doctors, that your reputation, good or bad, especially bad, spreads like wildfire. So having a network, thinking about the mindset of networking as relationship building is really key. Because if I'm thinking about networking as relationship building, I'll approach Faiz and say, hey, Faiz, listen, I'm John, I've done this. We've never spoken before, but I'd love if you've got, I love what you've accomplished. I'd love if you've got 30 minutes. I'd love to speak with you. Hope to hear from you soon. Have a great day. If I've got the mindset, if I'm going to take from this guy, the traditional networking approach, I'd go in and say, hey, Faiz, I'm John. Can you help me? And those mindset shifts that I've mentioned with regards to rejections, progression, and relationship building are really important to have. I got one yesterday with someone saying that, I've got this, I've done this, can you give me some guidance? And I kind of asked, what I do now, I'll ask questions. And if someone has done their homework, or if they come across as quite sympathetic or empathetic or caring, then I will help them, right? If they come across as if they're going to disrespect my time, I don't have time for that. So you've got to consider that's how people are going to think as well. You've got to respect people's time. You're not top dog. We're not top dog anymore. How many doctors, CEOs are there in pharma? And so we've got to learn to just respect people, whatever their background, whatever their profession, and lean on mentors from all backgrounds. So I'm starting to sound like a Black Panther now, so I apologize.
Faiz, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I feel like I don't know whether we're giving a slightly bearish view of getting into pharma. Perhaps I might try and turn this around to something more positive, actually. So I would like to talk about and say, considering I was an orthopedic surgeon, do I regret doing what I've done and moving into pharma? And for me, it's absolutely not. I've loved the last 4 years. It's not that they've not been hard. You do have to accept rejection. You have to accept that people might not see your value because they just see you as a doctor. But I think for everyone on the call, if you want to go into pharma, look at me. I'm an orthopedic surgeon who now is a commercial director in oncology, right? There's no reason why I should be in this job, okay? I joined McKinsey at the age of like...
You're being modest.
No, I joined McKinsey at the age of like 35 with a wife who's a consultant doctor and a 1-year-old boy. Like I like to think that I've confounded all the norms in terms of like what you should do. Everyone's like, you can't leave medicine post CCT. Why did you do that? You know, you're mad. You know, have you left because you got struck off, or that kind of rubbish? Right? It's like, yeah, it's crazy, yeah. Then it's like you can't join going to consulting when you're old, especially if you've got a young baby or whatever. Like, and then like you're a doctor, you can't work in the commercial side of a pharma organization, right? And I think honestly, like, it's all possible. The best thing about leading in medicine, and I say this all the time, is you have limitless possibilities. And so it's all within your gift to go achieve whatever you want to do, whether it's within this country or elsewhere, whether it's in a top 5 pharma company or a top 50. Like, just do whatever you want to do. The key things are you need to always articulate your value to that job or to that company. You need to have full respect and knowledge of the job and company you're trying to enter into. And you really need to understand like what you're getting yourself into once you're in there, so you can actually like succeed in that role. And I think the final part kind of lends itself to what John was saying. You do have to take the bad times, you know. There are bad times. There was a time where I thought I'd spent all our money on an MBA and I basically had no job at the end of it, right? And I didn't know what to do. And you have to, and you know, I remember at that point in time, my wife was on maternity leave. We had no money coming in. I'd spent all our money on this MBA. I had no job prospects whatsoever. And you're feeling a bit tense about the whole thing, to put it mildly, right? So like, but you keep on going at it and things do turn out if you can do the things I said, right? You need to be good enough to get the job. You need to have the right CV. You need to articulate the story. You need to smash the interview, all those kind of things. But like, I'm a guy, I'm a surgeon, so I like controlling the controllable. And I think 99% of getting into whatever career you want to is within your control. So you just need to make sure you maximize that.
I agree with you, Faiz. I like the point. I like the story, the anecdote, that personal anecdote that you shared. Because, you know, for those who haven't experienced, you know, those of you who've been in the private sector, I know some people on the call are not necessarily pharma, but in the private sector, will understand the feeling of terror that comes with thinking what next, especially when you've been told that you have a job, and that can be so frightening. But again, it's part of your growth, right? I like the point that you made about self-conviction as well, having that self-conviction, because not everyone will be a champion. And some people have various judgments about why you've chosen your path, and you have to learn to ignore those, right? And that's why, bringing me on to the last bit about the importance of having a network. And by having a network, I don't just mean your network is your net worth type nonsense, but I mean by having concentric circles of people that you care about to various degrees. So when I've had my challenging times, I've been able to turn to people, or when I've had great times, I've been able to call up people and celebrate and, you know, have really good times with them. And again, to end on a more positive note, or at least end my current discussion on a positive note. Yes, absolutely. Medical affairs for me, I can't comment on the other ones. There's clinical development, there's market access, there's all these other parts, but I can't speak to those. But at least medical affairs is, for me, it's exciting. It's challenge. I like solving new problems. I work from home primarily. It's nice to wake up and have sufficient sleep. It's nice to be autonomous in your work. It's nice to be learning all the time. It's nice to kind of plan your career as you want. It's nice to meet really interesting people and have fascinating conversations with people around the world who might be in the same therapy area as you, but they're in Spain and they're thinking about things completely differently. I find that really exciting. So all in all, I would say, has it been worth it? Yes, absolutely. Has it been as rainbow frolicking in the fields as I thought? No. But I suppose that's just a part of just understanding it. But I can't overemphasize the importance of having people around you that you care about and who care about you. I mean, Faiz and I were texting a couple of weeks ago about various kind of thoughts on, you know, career in pharma and how do we do this. And I find that great. It was like, oh, great, man. We're just bouncing ideas, having a chat. But it was really kind of great. Then it was like kind of joking and bantering. It's like, this is cool, you know? But then that's because we intentionally reached out to each other. We intentionally kept in touch. But for me, the greatest thing has been that group of people around you, because you can't know everything. And the great thing is that people, medics and non-medics as well in pharma, are generally, if you approach them in the right way, will go a very long way to help you. So yes, in overall, I'd say it was a great decision. I recognize that I have so much more to learn. So I recognize that. So my boss, for example, he's a doctor as well, but I'll just observe what he does, learn from what he, you know, how he approaches things, how we, you know, solve certain solutions, how he handles problems. For me, that's exciting. I mean, I love that. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm growing every day, you know? So that's, if you kind of someone who loves learning, loves to grow, loves to develop, then absolutely it's going to be fantastic for you. I'm buzzing every day. But yeah, that's, I hope that kind of encourages that despite the challenges that are there, I think it is worthwhile. And Faiz keeps on saying he's only this and he's only that. I mean, the guy's like a freaking genius trying to be modern. So if you're competing against Faiz and you're an F2 and you're thinking you're going to compete against Faiz and get the job, you're not. I would also say then think about, look at LinkedIn, see what the competition's looking like and see what you need to do to upskill and be competitive, have a solid value proposition. That's not kind of saying you need to compete with people, just being realistic. Like, you're a product in the marketplace, as uncomfortable as that is, and you're selling yourself to a company. And that's it. Once you can accept that, it becomes a little bit easier to swallow.
That's great. I've got, you know, as someone very much further back in the journey, I've got two reflections, which I wonder whether you agree with, which is there's no easy options leaving medicine, but there's so many more options, which is really exciting, but also quite daunting, because you have to then explore like what even is the rest of the economy, and what are all these other businesses. And the other thing about networking is actually, in my experience, the cold reach outs and things like that are not the things that get you forward. It's actually all the people you've already met and going back through all the people you know and find it and re-exploring old relationships and sort of contacting that professor that you met 4 years ago and did a little research project with to see if you can do something more with them and stuff like that seems to work better. I think we've got like one more minute before we'll probably open it up for questions. I think, John, you just sort of rounded that off by saying, and I am someone who left medicine as an F2. So you said, like, if you're an F2, not really going to compete against someone who's a post-CCT orthopedics consultant who's worked at McKinsey. What are those things that you could do to build?
So you've got to think about there's someone who's called Martin Toll, right? There's a pharmaceutical group on Facebook, but someone you're already part of. And he's quite clever in that he says, you've got to think about who you can be competing with in 10 years' time. So fair enough, you get as an F2, but actually when you're applying for like medical director jobs, the people you're competing with are going to be people with like PhDs and publications and, you know, MBAs from Oxford and Oxbridge and all this kind of stuff. So what I would say, if you're F2 and then you can't actually do the PMST, pharmaceutical medicine training program, until you've done 4 years, but you can always do the Pharm Med. But I would say, again, those buckets, right? How can you develop yourself from a clinical research? For example, Robin, for example, yeah, you say you left as F2, but you've got clinical research experience, you've got leadership experience, you've got business experience, you've got corporate experience. You know what I mean? Those buckets, right? So you've got all the buckets. So you would be able to compete because you've covered those buckets. There's a case of thinking about what, and I've spoken to people who are like, oh, I don't know if I can compete. And they're like, oh, but I published 5. Wait, like, you published? They're like, yeah. I'm like, whoa, shit, man, like, that's clinical research. Like, great. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. They're like, oh yeah, I don't have much leadership, but you know, I did like run this course for medical students, and it's now implemented as part of. Wait, what? Like, that's leadership? Or they started something as part of a society in medical school that's now been implemented as part of the curriculum, or it's become a small charity. And they don't realize that a lot of what they've achieved fits those buckets. So some people, a lot of doctors actually, are more competitive than they realize. But it's just about packaging the product, the iPhone, correctly and making it sellable. And so that's what I would say that they can do. Again, the buckets are your professional development, as in your professional progress, clinical research, leadership, and one more, which I can't remember. Management. Anyway, there's one more. But anyway, you'll see, if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see what I've broken down into. And then the next thing is, don't be afraid about advertising yourself. Remember when I first went on LinkedIn, I had people saying, oh yeah, the only doctors who want to show off about their things, man, join LinkedIn. And I'm like, yeah, fine. That hurt, but I'm going to pretend it didn't. And now everyone's on LinkedIn. But the point is that recruiters do look at LinkedIn. And then the important thing, yeah, so that's what I would say. So think about where you want to be in 10 years, upskill accordingly. So I'm not saying that if you enter Pharma as an F2, you won't be able to compete. I'm saying if you enter Pharma, some people do get as an F2, but if you're getting as an F2, think, okay, fine, I'll be up against the likes of Faiz in 5 years' time. What can I do in the interim? And then they can go and like work with a commercial team for a while, or maybe get an MBA, or maybe get to do a course in, I think someone did the Investment Banking Institute kind of thing. So that when you do get there, you are competitive. And then that's where mentors come in. There'll be lots of things that I need to develop that I don't know about myself. So I go to my mentors, I was thinking of doing this, like, what you think about doing? Like, no, that's wrong. Like, think about doing this. So I don't know if that answers my question. There's lots that you can do. And then think about what you have that already makes you competitive. And then seek out. I keep on emphasizing mentorship so much, but I would not be where I am without just kind, good people just guiding me for free. Because, and then passing it forward, man. Like, if people help you, then be determined to pass that forward.
Guys, I don't know whether like anyone's got any questions, by the way. Like, put it in the chat. Like, I definitely do, but put them in the chat. I don't know whether it might be worth like talking about more about like the process of finding, like, basically what I did up until that kind of, when I decided I wanted to leave medicine, what did I do basically, and how did I get into MSD? Like, first of all, there's lots of introspection you have to do to figure out your why, you know, and like why you're leaving medicine, why you're more attracted to the pull factors of elsewhere. So it really makes you talk, you know, whether you have like career counseling, whether you just talk about it with your mentors or your wife or your partner, whatever. I actually spoke about it at length with my consultant. When I was in my last fellowship, I spent a lot of time talking about it with the consultant body at St George's, actually, in orthopedics. Both my kind of like immediate supervisor, my fellowship supervisor, and to be honest, when you're at that level, you can just have chats about what's life like as a consultant orthopedic surgeon here in George's or whatever. And I just had like lots of conversations with like my consultant supervisors to kind of like figure out, you know, what I was thinking. Then I did the next step of like what everyone else does, is you basically go on LinkedIn and try and find friends of friends of friends of friends who have made the switch into various careers, because you need to identify what career you might be attracted to. You know, whether that's startups, whether it's, I mean, generally speaking, like startups, VC, consulting, investment banking, pharma, generally like the main ones for doctors, you know. So just basically, and you'll send like 10 messages on LinkedIn and like one person will respond only, but that's fine, that's expected. Like, you know, I miss so many messages because like I don't have time, because like if I'm talking to you, I'm probably not spending time with my son, and that for me is not acceptable. So that's kind of why I don't respond a lot of the time. So you've got to just have to appreciate some people aren't going to respond, but that's fine. Just like, you know, and talk to as many people as you can. Just talk. Then talk to recruiters if they want to talk to you. Bear in mind that especially at this kind of entry level, recruiters are, you know, they're there to earn their commission. So you need to, you know, respect the fact that they may not be interested in you or come with their own agenda. But like, this is all like information gathering, really. And then you need to kind of put that all together in terms of, okay, what do I want to do? What's the information I gathered about what might be best for me? What would my CV look like? You know, how would I write it? How do I articulate the story, my skills, etc. And you need to basically start finding these jobs, yeah. And I think, you know, the best way to find these jobs is via LinkedIn. You know, essentially, that's a really good way to find these jobs. And I think if you can, try and find friends of friends of friends who work for those companies who might be able to give you a referral into those jobs.
That's a good one.
Or try and get you at least like a referral plus a chat with the hiring manager. And, you know, again, 9 times out of 10, that'll fail. But just in case you get that one person, I spoke to really good hiring managers when I was applying for medical affairs jobs. I spoke to some people at like Bayer and Pfizer and stuff like that. I actually didn't get to talk to anyone at MSD, to be honest, but anyway, but like still, like so it's really good. You get to kind of have those, you know, that's those little kind of phone calls that are outside the HR department where you can again show your personality, show how you're someone who might be good to work with. And then I think you need to make sure, like I say, your CV, like a 1-page CV, don't give 5 pages. You know, I think I had like a 30-page medical CV for like, you know, I think actually you need to have 1 page, right? Make sure every single bullet point, every single line shows why you are above the rest, both in terms of accolades, awards, skills, problem solving. You have to read each sentence and think, what problem did I solve? Am I demonstrating what problem am I demonstrating that I solved in these 2 lines of bullet points? And if you think it's just something, if you read it and think, why does that differentiate me from anyone else? If it doesn't differentiate you, remove it. It's completely superfluous. I don't do CV reviews, but I remember someone who was a management consultant, not for like a big 4 firm, ex-doctor, sent me a CV, a month or two ago. And this guy is like a ex-medic, Big Four consultant, and the CV was quite frankly appalling because like nothing differentiated them from anyone else. Like it was 2 pages. And there's all those kind of things. Like you just need to like really think about one side. What's the best version that I can give of what I've done? And then when it comes to the interview, you're going to have to demonstrate obviously technical skills and like personal kind of skills. These are all you can, if you could just learn this, you can just practice and learn it, practice. If you've gone through medical interviews, whether it's at CT, ST or consultant level, you can absolutely smash these out of the park if you just practice enough. So I think those are some of the real concrete things. Like I love interviews. I love getting an interview because I know then this is 100% within my control, right? Like they can only judge me on what I'm saying and I control what I say. So you've got to get that mindset, really get that mindset, right? And to be fair, this is the same in consulting, right? Like this is not like, if you want to get into consulting, just get the interview because then it's up to you and no one can stop you if you back yourself. So those are kind of some of the real tangible things I would look to do. Information gather, number 1. Number 2, find jobs via LinkedIn, get referrals, get chats with a hiring manager. Then make sure your CV is perfectly tailored to the job to show your skills, and then prepare for the interview like an exam. We've got some questions, I think, in the chat here, actually. Let's see.
People, so if we go down, Abdul Hassan has a question. Are you happy to read it out yourself, Abdul? I know you're in the call somewhere. If not, I'll just read it out. So he says, thank you for the insightful comments. I'm a pre-CCT SD7 T&O trainee. He's had conflicting advice about whether he should CCT or leave at this stage, basically.
Very short answer. Do you want to be an orthopedic surgeon or not? If you do, then get a CCT. If you don't, then leave. There's no value to be getting a CCT in orthopedics if you don't want to be an orthopedic surgeon. So, like, I still went in at the same level into pharma that a FY1 or 2 would go in at. So, yeah. So, I mean, the only good thing is that, like, whether you're an ST7 or whether you're a post CCT, you've got so much great like clinical training that you can say this is how I would treat my patients, and you can bring that into the corporate environment. You don't really have that as an F1 or F2 because like without which sound offensive, you just don't have that because you're not really in charge of patients. So like you've got this experience enough already to be able to lend it all to the corporate world. Only get your CCT if you want to be a surgeon. Okay, next one.
I think that's for you as well, Faiz. It's another.
Oh yeah, so this is like, well, I think 𝗥𝗶𝗴𝗵𝗵, you've kind of answered it already, right? Because your last sentence, how do you decide against so much sunk cost and a job security for life? So go do an MBA, you'll learn what a sunk cost is, right? It's already sunk. So what does it matter? You ignore it, right? This is not. If you're worried about, there's no marginal cost. You've sunk the cost already, right? So you basically need to put that behind you. So the questions you need to ask yourself are, do I feel more excited about leaving medicine or staying within medicine? And that excitement, it has to be a personal choice. Like, for me, some of the factors you need to look at are like again, these are very personal things. You need to look at geographic flexibility, content of your job, diary flexibility, salary. Like these are some of the factors that you have to think about and weigh up. I think, do I feel more excited about being a consultant in medicine, in whatever specialty that is, in whatever country that is, or do I feel more excited about going into a new role in whatever industry that looks like? And I think if you think about the sunk cost, that's like that's not the way to look at it. That's done. I actually personally look at I qualified in 2009, I CCT in 2019, and I left in 2021, early 2021, right? So I was 12 years as like a doctor, right? For me, the fact that I did some amazing, being a doctor is amazing, right? You have such tangible impact. I saw the best and worst of people. I operated on like over 2,000 people, like all these. That's so cool, right? Like, so for me, I think that's amazing. how many people in the world can say they've done that? How many people can say they've, like, you know, done all these super cool things and done all these stressful, wild things that you do in medicine, whether you're an F1 or an ST8? So I think that's great. And like, sure, should I have left medicine earlier? Yeah, I should have done, because I was kind of like, you know, I didn't use those skills that I developed. But the fact that I've been able to say I've done it and I've experienced it, I think is super cool. So
Yeah.
like, for me, it's a sunk cost, but it's also like a sunk bit of enjoyment. It was a great stage of my life.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, actually. I was going to come up back to one thing that you mentioned, actually, was about recruiters, about recruiters need to get their commission. So I'd say, before you speak to a recruiter, I would say kind of prepare like what you're going to say, make sure you've introspected, because given how competitive it is, you don't get as many chances with recruiters as you did. So see your talk with them almost like a pitch of yourself, and almost like you. Otherwise, you can end up getting ghosted. I got ghosted for a while. Then fortunately, I came back with the strongest CV a couple of years later, and they stopped ghosting me. So, but then now it's if they ghost you once, they're very unlikely to open it up again because of how busy it is. And then to the point that Faiz made about the sunk cost fallacy, I would say the way I see it, right? People would say, oh yeah, one person said, well, you know, a lot of naysayers, oh, John, you're going to Yale, you know that you can buy a 3-bedroom house with that kind of money, blah, 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 and all these kind of things, right? And all my friends who've gone to the Ivies and done a similar thing I warned them about this and they got similar pushback. But you can become philosophical about this. And the way I see it is I consider very much what I'm going to be reflecting on my deathbed. You know, I'm thinking if I'm going to be 80, 90 years old, I'm reflecting on my life. What do I want to be proud of? You know, and also what decisions, what factors are driving my decision making? Am I driven by the fact that mum, dad, and my community are saying you need to be of the right hand of God because you're a doctor and that's what makes the community proud? Or do I want to look back and say, yeah, it was pretty hard to break away from, you know, cut the umbilical cord, but I lived a life that I was proud of, that was exciting, that had its own tumult, but I lived it on my terms as much as possible. And so for me, the fear of dying, disrespecting myself because I lived through someone else's decision, is too horrific for me to consider. I'd rather die on my knees striving for what I wanted my life to look like than live on someone else's terms. But that's why people who are on this call are probably self-selected few, because there are a lot of people share that mindset, which is what's interesting about Pharma or people who leave. They're very similar in mindset and what they need as a framework. So I completely agree, Faiz, with what you said. I think about it philosophically. If I was to die now, I'd be like, yeah, I've got regrets, but you know what I don't regret is that I didn't live someone else's path. So that's it for me. And yeah, then sunk cost fallacy just abolishes, like, yeah, what else, you know, doesn't matter. Now, if you've got kids and a mortgage and all of that's risky, but this is why I admire what you've done, Faiz, because you have the mortgage, you have the car, you have the kid, you have the wife, and you still took that risk. And that's quite inspiring, actually, because it shows that actually, if you've got that kind of conviction and faith and support, then things can work out. And I hope I can see that you're building a life that you're prouder of than if you're stuck in ortho thinking, what could my life look like if only I tried?
Yeah, certainly less exciting at a dinner party, you know, than being a trauma surgeon. But you know, you give that up. I don't guess that means dinner party anymore. Niloufar Tabara, about this MSL. So first of all, a regional medical advisor role, that sounds like a regional medical advisor role, not an MSL role. So perhaps just check your understanding of the job, because, and again, this might lend itself to the fact that we really need to understand medical affairs before we start applying for things. Learn about what roles are like in global, regional, and local marketing countries. It's very different in terms of the nature of the job. But to your point, will it actually check GMC registration? No, like, you don't need to be a doctor. It's actually the degree that is just that you need. And like, I kept my GMC registration when I was a medical advisor because Merck paid for my GMC fees. But the minute I went to a company where they weren't going to pay for my fees, I stopped and I didn't, and I'm not GMC registered anymore because I'm not prepared to pay for it.
Yeah. And also, final SIG, if you want to be a final SIG, you want to keep your pharmacy or medical registration.
Point. Yeah. John, one for you, Jim. How did you get past the barrier of job descriptions requiring prior medical affairs experience?
Sorry, how did you get past sorry, some of the questions went because
how did you get past the barrier of job descriptions requiring prior medical affairs experience?
Yeah, they ask for it, don't they? Need prior. I think they say prior medical affairs experience preferable.
Right? I would just ignore it.
Exactly. I would ignore it. Yeah.
I think one of the people on the actual 𝗏𝗏 course, Philip Cruz, gave a really good answer for this.
Philip Cruz is great. He's a great.
He said when you write job descriptions, you just take whoever's left the role and put that straight into the job.
Yeah.
So they always say 3 years of experience because that's what the last person did in that role or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, don't worry. Everyone always says you need experience, but don't worry about it. Basically, like if you can demonstrate, what the role entails and how you can meet it, then it's fine.
Yeah, because I know someone who got into I won't name which company, but he got a couple of offers at highly competitive roles, similar level. I mean, just ST7, I think, publications, and he didn't meet a lot of the criteria, but he was so impressive that they could see the potential, so they took him on board.
I think.
So I'm just going to chime in here because we're over time now. So thank you so much for that incredible conversation. That last question, or the second last question that just came in by Joanne, which was, what would you recommend as the best way to learn about different types of role in the pharma and differences between companies? And I think maybe biased, and this is going to sound cheesy, but it's perfect segue into 𝗏𝗏 and what we do. And essentially what 𝗏𝗏 is that 8-week fellowship program, which covers all the different verticals within the pharmaceutical industry. And we go right the way from understanding the change of mindset that needs to occur from you moving from your clinical career into pharmaceutical industry, all the way through to kind of how the drug discovery department works, to preclinical trial development, clinical trial design, to medical affairs, to regulatory environments, what that looks like across the world, and then into marketing workshop led by Faiz himself, and then into pricing strategies, market access, health economics. So we cover the whole breadth of all the main structures or main areas of the pharmaceutical industry. And all of our workshops over the 8 weeks are led by industry experts such as Faiz, John, Philip Cruz, who was mentioned earlier. And also, if you have any questions around, or if you want to find out more about roles into pharmaceutical, into medical affairs specifically, Philip has an amazing podcast that he does. So look him up on LinkedIn.
The 𝗏𝗏 podcast.
That's the one. And he can pay me for affiliate money later. But honestly, a really, really good podcast for everybody to listen to if that's the route you want to take. And our deadline for our Global Pharma and Leadership Fellowship has actually been extended. So initially it was the 24th of October, the course was supposed to start. We are having to extend that. And the reason we're doing so is we have been inundated with applications. So we received over 400 applicants. So we're working through them. It's taking us time, but it does mean that you have a bit more time to apply if you want to be on the next cohort. I'd like to thank Faiz, John, and Robin once more. And if there's any final words from you guys, please chime in. And if there's any questions around the fellowship, for John, for Faiz, or for Robin, please send them across and I will make sure that they reach the right people.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks so much, everyone. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I may not reply, so I apologize for that, but just think I'd rather spend time with my son than spend time with talking to you. So no offense. And the final thing, guys, pull factors, not push factors.
Absolutely.
Pull factors, not push factors. The grass is not greener. It's just a slightly different shade. Okay.
And I'll just add to that point one more thing, which is one of the things that we do really take pride in at 𝗏𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏 Labs as an ecosystem, so our health tech fellowship program and our pharma fellowship program, is to help you build that network of people. And I think if I'm correct, we were able to connect John with Faiz, Robin with John and Faiz, and other connections within the industry. We're very proud of that, and that's something we take very seriously. So if you are interested in our fellowship, that's amazing. If not, you can also attend our events, look at our LinkedIn, join our posts, and you're welcome to come attend our events for the networking side of things.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.